Welcome to a Hymn by Hymn Extra. Some of you may not even have seen me before. I'm Kimberly. I'm the crazy person who's been doing this. And with me right now is the Reverend Dr. Michael Tino, who has opinions about Easter.
I do have opinions, and Kimberly indulges me in expressing my opinions, which is really wonderful.
It is. So I just want to begin by saying, oh my God, how is it we only have like 3 or 4 Easter hymns?
Well, I think Unitarian Universalists are afraid of Easter.
Okay.
So we'll start with that.
Okay.
Because I think that the theology of resurrection is one that a lot of us struggle with.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It is a theology, and the notion of that, what that story means in Christianity is one that we struggle with.
Right.
So I think it leads us to downplay the importance of Easter, even though it is the most important holiday in the Christian.
Correct.
We like to think Christmas is, but it's not.
No. Surprise. Well, and I wonder if some of it is because of other Christian theologies that would suggest that, Jesus died for your sins, which means that we were born sinful, which is really not what we see in certainly our Universalist theology. Mm-hmm. So it almost, rubs against our foundational theologies.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of complex reasons why the theologies of Easter are difficult for Unitarian Universals. I don't want to make light of this. I think there are a lot of complex and valid reasons.
Sure.
For theologies of Easter, and that's certainly one of them. The reason for Jesus's crucifixion. What is the theological reason?
Right.
Crucifixion, and the theological reason for the resurrection.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then we struggle with how literal are we going to be
right
about the resurrection. So we go all year claiming not to be biblical literalists. Easter comes around, and all of a sudden we can't talk about resurrection because the only way that we can interact with it is as a literal truth of bodily resurrection, which certainly many Christians believe it to be.
Sure.
But if that's the only way we can interact with it, it becomes problematic for us.
Right.
And I think it's worth us exploring why it is.
Yeah.
Because I will admit, I asked Kimberly, all y'all hymn by hymn viewers now, you're now viewers, became listeners at GA. You can now be viewers of the Hymn by Hymn series. But all of those of us who have been paying attention to Kimberly's wonderful project know that she got up to the Easter hymns just a couple days ago, and one of my pet peeves, I'll just be right up front. We're going to be right up front. One of my pet peeves about hymnody and Easter in Unitarian Universalist congregations is our tendency to conflate the beginning of spring with the resurrection of Jesus.
Right.
Okay? And it's not just ours. And because, as we noted, now the green blade riseth is not actually a Unitarian Universalist hymn in its origin.
Correct.
So Anglicans did that too.
Oh, yeah. Well, Hosmer, of course Hosmer is one of ours, but Wesley did some of it, Coleridge did some of it. It's
right. So, we have Jesus Christ is risen today.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of our Easter section.
Right.
And there are going to be a lot of loyal hymn by hymn followers who will say, well, that's my Easter hymn.
Right.
Right? Because it pretty much is, the definitive one.
Mm-hmm.
But we have all this other beautiful music And so much of it talks about spring.
Right.
And to me, and I'll own this as my own personal thing. I'm not proclaiming this needs to be true for all of Unitarian Universalism. To me, spring happens every year.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the natural cycles of life.
Right.
Plants go dormant in this part of I'm in New York. Plants don't go dormant everywhere in the world, but here in the northern climes of the northern hemisphere, plants go dormant in the winter, and they come back in the spring. Seeds lie in wait in the soil, and they sprout when it's warm enough. It's a beautiful and transcendent thing, spring.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not rising from the dead.
Right. Right.
Right? And what the story of Easter is the story of Christ rising from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that does not happen
right
every year.
Exactly.
And to me, that's part of the point of the story.
Mm-hmm.
It does not actually happen on a regular basis.
Sure.
And so therefore, we celebrate it as a miracle to point out that it happened for a particular reason.
Yeah.
Or that the story is.
Sure.
That it happened for a particular reason.
And this isn't just hope's gone quiet. This is hope is lost and now is reborn.
Right.
You know? So
and even in winter, hope is always there.
Right.
Right? Because we know that the
Mm-hmm.
trees are not dead.
That's right.
And we know that the grass is not dead. And I preach often about my crocuses.
Uh-huh.
Part of my spiritual journey, right? So any one of you who knows me on Facebook knows that I post every year when the first crocuses in my front yard bloom.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't doubt that the crocuses will come back.
Right.
I don't fear that they're not there when I don't see them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So part of winter to me is understanding that the crocus bulbs are waiting.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They're being quiet, that they're restoring themselves.
Sure.
That some bulbs actually require the cold of winter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To sprout again. So we learn, what do we require from that period of quiet and dark, to restore and regenerate ourselves. But that's not what the tomb is about, right? It's about death.
Right. Here was a crushing end to a ministry that was really just getting started.
Right.
Here was, the in some ways the surprise checkmate in this game of chess. As carefully as it was played out, all of a sudden, boom, And one of the things that is so striking is for me the time between Tenebrae and Easter morning. This time of surprise and shock and, how do we go on? How do we hold one another? The sense of loss. And for the women, certainly the sense of duty, but that's sort of a separate category. But, how do you go on when all is lost?
And so you and I have talked about this before, so this is not a wholly unscripted,
right?
Though it's mostly our music and ramblings, as it should be. That there are things that happen and have happened in our world,
right?
Where the more appropriate metaphor is resurrection,
right,
and not the rebirth of spring.
Correct. Right. So the one that I first learned actually from Linda Hottie, and I continue to use, is the metaphor of Mount St. Helens.
Mm-hmm.
That after the volcano, it was dead.
And the earth was poisoned.
Yes.
With scalding, caustic ash.
Exactly.
Right? This is not snow.
Right. Right. This is not snow. This is not a flood.
It was like 1,000-degree caustic ash.
Right. In layers that were feet, yards tall.
And somehow life managed to come back to that place. And it had to come back from outside of it.
Exactly. And it came back in unsurprising ways. So one of the things that I learned about Mount St. Helens is that scientists believe that they knew how devastated landscapes come back, what order things come back in, how quickly they come back, how this happens. Mount St. Helens came back faster than anyone expected in completely surprising ways. So they learned suddenly new things about these ecological resurrections, and they use the term resurrection.
Right, because the landscape was dead.
Dead, exactly.
I mean, the streams were poisoned.
Yes.
With heavy metals.
Yep. I
mean, things could not live in them.
Exactly.
Right, so life had to be brought back to them.
Right.
In a way that it could sustain.
Mm-hmm.
The example that I use and have used in the past, which is fitting given where we both were, recently is the example of New Orleans after the post-Katrina federal floods.
Right.
And that's the way they refer to them.
Yeah, the federal flood.
Federal floods.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to use the words that New Orleans used to describe what happened to their city. Mm-hmm. The first time I was in New Orleans after Katrina and after the floods was about a year post-flood. Mm-hmm. And I was there to volunteer and helped set up things at what's now the Center for Ethical Living and Social Justice Renewal. But wasn't even then. It was just like, we think we might have some space to host people.
Right.
I said first UU New Orleans. So I was there helping them, and they took me on something of a tour of what went on. And they took me to the lower Ninth Ward. And what was in the lower Ninth Ward a year after the floods receded was death.
Mm.
It was piles of rotting wood. It was, there was a smell in the air that was a smell of death because things were rotting still. It was the debris of lives that were lost there, that had not yet been even cleaned up. I mean, some of it had been piled up, so there were these piles. And I went back a couple years later with the youth group from the congregation I serve to volunteer to do rebuilding. And what I experienced there was emptiness. Right? It was the emptiness of the tomb. It wasn't the death part. It was it's not dead anymore, but it's not alive yet either.
Right.
That things had been wiped clean. The piles of rotting debris had been moved away, but what was there were concrete pads where houses used to be.
Wow.
And so as far as you could see in any direction, all there were these concrete pads where there used to be houses. And you could look at them and understand that each one of those concrete pads used to be someone's home, and a family used to live there, and wonder where those people were. Did they survive? But it was gone.
Wow.
And I went back there a couple of years after that with with the youth group again from the congregation I serve on another volunteer trip. And there were houses on many of those things, on many of those pads. It wasn't the full vibrant neighborhood that it was before the flood, before the storm, before it was destroyed. But it was coming back to life. There was life. There were people in the streets talking with one another.
Right.
There were houses.
Yeah.
Some families had been able to return. There were churches opening. and community centers opening where people could gather with one. There were schools opening again. And so that's the one real life example where I think resurrection is a more appropriate metaphor.
Right.
Spring.
Right.
But it was dead.
Yeah.
People were dead, and the people are not coming back to life.
Right.
But the city certainly is.
Yeah. No, and I think those are the kinds of metaphors that I think are more helpful for us to see places where there has been death, where a landscape, a neighborhood, something has died. And I think some of the power of resurrection is in the not knowing how it's going to come back. Mount St. Helens came back differently than Jesus came back, then the Ninth Ward has come back. That there's always a surprise of return, a rebirth, reliving whatever word we want to use. The crocuses don't surprise me.
No, but that doesn't make them any less transcendent.
Absolutely not. And God knows we've got a long enough section of spring hymn, right?
I'm not trying to prove the transcendence of spring.
Right.
I'm trying to say that it's something different than the resurrection of Easter.
Sure.
And it would be nice to have another hymn other than Jesus Christ is risen today.
Right. Because I look at these two hymns, 269 and 270. Lo, the day of days is here, and O day of light and gladness. Now, I love these two hymns. They're wonderful for the season.
both written by Unitarian minister Frederick Hosmer.
Yeah, who served in Berkeley. Apparently.
So we learned on him by him.
Yes.
And the good Reverend Christian Smith.
Because I spelled it wrong. Because of a typo, we've learned that he served in Berkeley. So, so he's probably serving there right at the turn of the last century in the midst of the fellowship movement and all of that establishment out in California.
So he created even the fellowship movement. But
I'm sorry?
He died in 1929.
Oh, yeah.
He created even the fellowship movement.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're beautiful lyrics.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting. I'm trying to read. I was trying to read. Which is it? One of these, as basically the earth is celebrating Easter.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, all nature lifts in chorus the resurrection hymn.
Right.
Is the end of the second verse of O Day of Light and Gladness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to think maybe we can understand the earth celebrating the resurrection as something to hold on to.
Right. And so if nature lifting in chorus saying, yeah, we're going to show you all these great flowers because we love Easter. Okay.
Which I'm trying to dig to find where this actually relates to resurrection. I'm trying. Yeah. That's as far as I could get.
Yeah. Yeah. This is difficult, this hymn. I'm looking at the third verse of this. O dawn of life eternal, to thee our hearts upraise, the Easter song of gladness, the Passover of praise. The lyric of literation.
Problematic enough right there.
Yeah. Thine are the many
mansions. Both Easter and Passover. I'm like, they're also different from one another.
Right. Thine are the many mansions, the dead die not to thee, who fillest from thy fullness time and eternity. Wow. um, so I don't know. This one's a tough one.
Well, and the dead die not to thee is a particular theology
Mm-hmm.
of salvation and of
Right.
a particular eschatology.
Sure. Sure.
Right? You went to Union, so
Yes. So we know all those big words. Well, it's also, and to throw another big word into it, it's also about substitutionary atonement. And did Jesus die for our sins? Did he die so that we could live? Is that the reason for the resurrection?
Which I think, lots of people do believe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Including many of our Universalist
right
ancestors who believe that Jesus's death and resurrection saved all of us.
Right. Yeah.
We can talk about that theology all we want. It's just so few ways to sing about it is what's appropriate here on the hymn by hymn extra.
Right. So it is interesting. Looking back at Lo, the Day of Days is here. It's all about, yay, nature celebrates. Hooray. And I guess, and I don't know enough about other Easter hymns. I'd need to open up my Presbyterian and Methodist and UCC hymnals and start looking at their Easter hymns to see what is reflected in those that we're missing or that we've tried to condense into one.
Mm-hmm.
And do we have opportunities by having more hymns that talk about Easter, even if we are uncomfortable with them? Are there enough hymns that we can use that we can talk about our Unitarian and Universalist theologies around resurrection and see how resurrection can feed us or provide I don't want to say metaphor, that seems too light, but a metaphor, a story that so we can understand what happens in devastation.
Right?
What?
That it can be a text for us to use.
Right.
Yeah. So Unitarian Universalist musicians out there,
we want more.
This is our hymn by hymn Easter challenge.
Yes, we want more Easter hymns.
Easter hymns.
Easter.
Not
spring hymns. Yeah.
Or look, there are leaves on the trees again.
Yes.
We like leaves on the trees.
Well, and sort of as a side thing, I think we get so many of us have used 61 Lo, the Earth Awakes Again, which is set to the Easter hymn tune. And it is absolutely a spring song.
Mm-hmm. I use that at the vernal equinox.
Right. Mm-hmm. And how many of us have used it on Easter?
Sunday, right.
On Easter Sunday. Because it sounds like the Easter hymn, but it's not the same words. And so then that comes down to the allergies over theology and allergies over words. One of the things I have done before and hope to do again someday is a check your theology at the door hymn sing, where you pull the old songs and the old-timey hymns that everybody remembers growing up. And, I come to the garden alone, but I hate what the theology is. And to have this opportunity to sing those, but then go, why do we not like this theology? Or what is it that's still redeeming? And so I think often we might use Lo, the Earth Awakes Again because it harkens to that old thing that people remember from their childhood without making them crazy around the theology. And I think we're doing a disservice.
I would agree, which is why I'm here. And then I will say to loyal Hymn by Hymn followers,
Mm-hmm.
if you would like a Check Your Theology at the Door hymn sing, you can hire the Reverend Kimberly Deepus to come to you.
We could do it.
I'm promoting you right here on your own blog.
Well, that's okay. I'm still figuring out how to promote myself. So
I know. I thought, boy, she's not going to say it. I can bring that to you if you want it. Well, there, I'll be your paid spokesman.
There we go. Paid for by
an actual client.
That's right. Anyway, good challenges. So we definitely need to challenge our musicians for more hymns.
And I look forward to all the people who follow Hymn by Hymn who are going to vehemently disagree with me.
Yes. Could be a very active comments section.
Because I know that they're going to be there.
That's right. Yeah.
So we can have, hopefully this will spark an interesting and fruitful discussion.
Absolutely.
On your.
Yep. And now I have da 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 da. It's stuck in my head. You're welcome. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Take good care.